good teacher? I mean, think about it. What makes a good teacher? Is it classroom management or test scores? Definitely test scores. Or is it years experience? But what makes a good teacher to you? I'd like to invite you to take a minute, close your eyes, and think back. Think back to the educator whose fingerprint upon your life can be seen right now on this very day. Think back. Are you there? Can you hear their voice? What do you remember? Open your eyes. See, for me, it would be Mr. Glassnap, hands down. I would have him my freshman year of high school for biology, and then again my sophomore year for chemistry, and finally my senior year of high school for IB, environmental science, where by the end of the class, not only did I think I could save the planet, but I could also purify water around the world while treading through the upward rivers and lakes of Wisconsin, because Mr. Glassnap had taught me how. What I didn't realize at the time was he was using strategies that were based in experiential learning. See, experiential learning allows for the individual to have both hands-on, collaborative, and reflective thinking processes, so that when they're all coupled together, it winds up allowing the student to fully learn new skills and knowledge. Typically in 4 different modes, it's learning through action, by doing, through direct experience, or even discovery and action. So from the years of 2011 to 2015, I worked in the education department of the Milwaukee Art Museum. And while there, part of my role would include guiding individuals through tours of specific exhibitions. Exhibitions such as 30 Americans from the Rubal Family Collection, where art objects such as Gary Simmons' Duck, Duck, Noose would be displayed in a corner. Small, childlike stools form a circle, individually capped with white hoods, a noose suspended from the middle of the room, an invitation to a familiar childhood game that not one of us would want to accept. See, learning through action encourages and directs the learner towards a response. In this case, observers were invited to write their thoughts down and their impressions on a Post-it note, comments that would fill a room 3 of the 4 walls in that particular hall, comments that would range from, I remember my grandparents talking about this, things like this happening in the South, or why is this still happening? Black Lives Matter. Or how is this even in a museum? Why would you consider this art? See, the best thing about learning through action is it can take place and be in response for the youngest of viewers. And while, yes, content is important, learning through process is at the heart of experiential learning, and it can also take place in groups. So when you take a group of little ones out into the park and you can encourage them through the content of creating their own stories about their Mawaukee, as individuals demonstrate for them and instructors model prints of singular colors, where each child can self-reflect, only to have their own vision and memory of Mawaukee be placed in a book on display in the museum, differences start to happen. And designs of a learning experience can include the possibility of learning from natural consequences, mistakes, and successes. And while participants who are in a room have the opportunity to respond, being driven towards action, their body movements and modern dance can mimic the swirls and circles and strokes of Kandinsky's mural. And best of all, this works for students of all ages. They're allowed the freedom to make strides in their learning process. And as you self-evaluate, in this particular case, teachers, creating themselves into a tableau, a mirror image of Thomas Selle's portraits, they start to self-evaluate their own progression in the learning process, which becomes the primary means of assessment. So now the teacher can move from the sage on the stage, a teacher-centric classroom, to the guide on the side. Learning experiences can be developed that are both positive and non-dominating for the learner. So Dr. Makola Abdullah, he's the president of Virginia State University. He talks about the artificial line between STEM and the arts, a line that at schools like Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy is being eradicated, where 6th grade students create miniature boxcars from recyclables. Individually, they lead their own independent action. Using constructivist thought, they start to build their approach and connect to the familiar of simple machines. And then 8th graders, as opposed to just reading about transportation, they actually create a boat, well, a skiv to be precise. So in partnership with All Hands on Boat Works, these students use power tools with guidance, and through the process, they not only learn physics, but math, social skills, technical skills, engineering, and art as they finalize their designs. And you best believe if you ask a 3rd grader what all should be included in the ideal playground, not only will they write you a brief essay, but they're going to give you prototypes to show you what needs to be done. So art or art objects can be aligned as the entry point for all participants, regardless of background and instructional level. So even little 1st graders learning parts of a bee can show you best through a sculpture. So experiential learning, we know, takes place in museums, it takes place in classrooms, but it sometimes can take place in communities where organizations like Artists Working in Education and artists like Johnny Kowalczyk join together. Starting with a simple idea, they begin to craft a draft of what a mural could look like. What that idea becomes a plan, a collection of sketches, and through the process, leading to a product. The idea from Dr. Dina and Marcella Garcia, sisters here in the Latino community that are committed to educating the individuals around them about diabetes and high blood pressure and how other ailments can simply be avoided with proper oral and dental health. So through experiential learning, the instructor guides rather than directs the learning process. And it guides the students to where they're already naturally curious and interested in learning. So according to the National Experiential Learning Organization, and yes, there is such a thing, well, according to them, when this particular teaching strategy is employed, relationships are developed and nurtured, student to self, student to others, student to world, because of the teaching process. So what have I learned by employing this process in my own practice? Well, first and foremost, that programs that employ this as a combination of learning strategies tend to be most successful. And along that same line, learning can happen without a precursor or any sort of guided experience ahead of time. And above all else, it's fun. So remember when we first met each other and I asked you to think back to the teacher whose fingerprint can be seen upon your life today? I would almost imagine that you did not picture yourself in rows, a boring lecture, or working in isolation. I would guarantee that it was probably a time where you had a combination of learning strategies. You probably were working in groups or with someone else, hands-on, and had a chance to shine? What would our schools and universities look like if this was our daily practice? Thank you.